Captain Da-hyun Reed was tired. His muscles ached from the long months in zero gravity. His ship, the Horizon, hummed as it approached the docking bay of Outpost 72. This remote trading station hung in the darkness at the edge of human space, a last stop before the vast unknown. Docking sequence initiated, he muttered to himself. The station's artificial gravity would feel strange after so long in space. His stomach growled loudly. 3 months of eating nothing but reconstituted protein blocks had left him desperate for real food. The station's docking control buzzed through his communication system. Horizon, you are cleared for Bay 14. Welcome to Outpost 72. Da-hyun guided his cargo hauler into the assigned bay, the magnetic clamps securing with a dull thud that vibrated through the hull. He ran through the shutdown checklist quickly, eager to leave the confines of his ship. Atmosphere normalized. Pressure stable. Engine cool-down initiated, the ship's computer announced in its flat voice. He stepped through the airlock and breathed deeply. Even the recycled air of the station smelled better than his ship's. The corridor ahead buzzed with activity. Humans mixed with a dozen alien species, all going about their business. Traders haggled over prices. Maintenance crews fixed lighting panels. Security personnel watched everyone with suspicious eyes. Da-hyun's first stop was the administration office to register his cargo, 20 tons of rare minerals from the outer colonies. The board clerk barely looked at him as she processed his paperwork. Delivery fee transferred to your account, she said. Will you be staying long? Just long enough for a real meal and some sleep in a room that doesn't move, Da-hyun replied. The clerk pointed down the main corridor. Try the last stop. Only decent food on this level. Da-hyun nodded his thanks and made his way through the crowded passages. His bones felt heavy under the artificial gravity. The station hummed with the sounds of commerce and conversation in a dozen languages. The last stop wasn't hard to find. The smells alone led him there, spices and cooking oil, a welcome change from the sterile scent of his ship. The establishment's entrance was marked by a flickering sign showing a spacecraft landing. Inside, dim lights cast everything in a reddish glow. The place was half full with a mix of species. A group of miners laughed loudly in one corner. 2 reptilian traders argued quietly in another. Behind the long metal bar stood Tark, the owner. His 6 arms moved constantly, mixing drinks, serving food, taking payments. His insect-like mandibles clicked as he noticed Da-hyun. Human. Long journey. Tark called out. 3 of his arms continued to work while the others gestured Da-hyun to an empty seat at the bar. Too long, Da-hyun replied, settling onto the stool. What's good today? Tark's compound eyes glittered in the dim light. Synthetic protein. Alga soup. Station-grown vegetables. Da-hyun frowned. Nothing better. I've been eating synth food for months. Tark leaned closer, lowering his voice. His mandibles clicked more softly now. Special items. For special customers. Fresh meat. Very rare. Very expensive. Da-hyun's mouth watered at the thought of actual meat. How expensive. Tark named a price that made Da-hyun wince. It was nearly half his payment for the entire cargo run. But after months of tasteless rations, the temptation was too strong. Fine, he said, transferring the credits from his account. When will it be ready? Tark's mandibles clacked in what might have been a smile. Not here. Too special. Delivered to your quarters. 1 hour. Da-hyun finished a drink of dubious origin and made his way to the habitat ring of the station. His temporary quarters were small but clean, a welcome change from his cramped ship cabin. He showered with real water, a luxury after months of sonic cleaning. Exactly 1 hour after his conversation with Tark, the door chimed. Da-hyun opened it to find 2 station security officers. Between them floated a sealed containment pod, roughly the size of a small bed. Delivery for Captain Reed, said the taller officer, his face expressionless. That's a big container for a meal, Da-hyun said, suddenly uneasy. The officer shrugged. We just transport. Sign here. Dae-hyun pressed his thumb to the scanner. The officers guided the pod into his quarters and left without another word. The door slid shut behind them with a soft hiss. Alone now, Dae-hyun approached the container. It was a standard medical transport pod, used for moving patients in stasis. A control panel on its side glowed with status lights. This was definitely not a food delivery container. "What did I just pay for?" he muttered, pressing the release button on the pod. The top section slid open with a quiet hiss of escaping gas. Inside, curled on her side, was a humanoid figure, female. Her skin was a pale blue, almost translucent. She wore a simple gray shift that barely covered her thin frame. Her eyes were closed, her breathing shallow. Dae-hyun stepped back in shock. "This isn't food. This is a person." At the sound of his voice, the alien's eyes snapped open. They were silver, completely silver, with no visible pupils. She looked at him and pressed herself against the far wall of the pod, trembling visibly. "I won't hurt you," Dae-hyun said, raising his hands to show they were empty. "I didn't know. I thought I was ordering food." The alien's expression changed from fear to confusion. She spoke, her voice soft and musical. The words were in a language Dae-hyun didn't understand. "I don't understand," he said. "Do you speak Universal Standard?" The alien paused, then spoke again. This time, the words were heavily accented but recognizable. "You, not eat me." Dae-hyun felt sick. "Eat you? No, never. I'm human. We don't eat sentient beings." Relief flooded the alien's silver eyes. "Others do. Buy me for eating ceremony." Dae-hyun's hands clenched into fists. He'd heard rumors of such practices in the outer systems, but had dismissed them as spacer tales. Now the truth was right in front of him. "What's your name?" he asked gently. "Ji-soo," she replied after a pause. "I'm Dae-hyun," he said, "and I think I've just made a terrible mistake." Dae-hyun stared at Ji-soo, the blue-skinned alien who sat cautiously on the edge of his bed. His thoughts raced. He had just spent half his earnings on what he thought would be a rare meal, only to discover he had purchased a sentient being. The realization made his stomach turn. "Are you hungry?" he asked, trying to break the uncomfortable silence. Ji-soo nodded slightly. Her silver eyes never left him, watching his every move with careful attention. Dae-hyun went to the small food preparation unit in his temporary quarters and returned with a protein bar and a cup of water. He offered them to Ji-soo, keeping his distance to avoid frightening her. She took the items with slender blue fingers. Her hands had only 4 digits each, with an extra joint that human fingers lacked. She sniffed the protein bar before taking a small bite. "Thank you," she said in halting Universal Standard. "How long have you been in that pod?" Dae-hyun asked. Ji-soo's face showed confusion as she calculated. 3, maybe 4 of your days. Before that, different container." Dae-hyun sat down across from her. "I need to understand what's happening. Why are you here? Where are you from?" Ji-soo finished the protein bar before answering. "I am Ilari, from planet called Ilaria by your kind." She pointed upward, as if indicating a distant star. "Far from here, beyond the empty zone." Dae-hyun frowned. The empty zone was a vast region with few stars, marking the current boundary of human exploration. Few had ventured beyond it. "How did you end up on this station?" he asked. Ji-soo's silver eyes clouded with what might have been tears, though none fell. "Vraxians came to our world 6 moons ago. Big ships, many weapons." Her simple words carried enormous weight. "They took many Ilari, killed those who fought, my family." She stopped, unable to continue. "I'm sorry," Dae-hyun said softly. "The Vraxians are slavers." "Worse," Ji-soo replied. "They sell us as food." Dae-hyun felt sick again. "Food, but you're sentient beings." "Some species in galaxy do not care," Ji-soo explained. "Ilari brain chemistry creates pleasure feelings when consumed by certain species. Very expensive. Status symbol. Her speech was improving by the minute, as if she were quickly absorbing the language. And that's why Tark was selling you to me. He thought I wanted to eat you. Da-hyun couldn't keep the horror from his voice. Jisoo nodded. Humans have reputation. Some buy aliens to free them. Others buy for other reasons. Her silver eyes studied him carefully. You did not know what you were buying. No. I thought I was getting actual animal meat. Not a person. Da-hyun stood and paced the small room. This is illegal in human space. Slavery is forbidden. Trafficking sentient beings carries severe penalties. Not illegal everywhere, Jisoo said quietly. And who enforces laws at edge of space? Da-hyun had no answer for that. Outpost 72 existed in a gray area, technically under human jurisdiction, but so remote that many activities went unchecked. How many more like you are on this station? He asked. Cannot know. I was kept alone. Jisoo's four-fingered hand touched a thin metal collar around her neck that Da-hyun hadn't noticed before. This prevents Ilari abilities. Abilities. Jisoo hesitated before answering. Ilari connect to technology. Feel it. Speak to it. Control it sometimes. She tapped the collar. This blocks connection. Painful when I try. Da-hyun leaned closer to examine the collar. It had no visible lock or seam. I'll help you get it off, but not right now. First, we need to figure out what to do. A sudden pounding on the door made them both jump. Station security. Open up, Captain Reed. Da-hyun motioned for Jisoo to stay quiet. He approached the door, but didn't open it. What's this about? Routine inspection of all cargo. Open the door immediately. Da-hyun didn't believe that for a second. I need to see identification first. There was a pause, then the sound of an override code being entered. The door slid open to reveal 3 security officers, all armed. Behind them stood Tark, all 6 of his arms crossed over his chest. There appears to have been a misunderstanding, said the lead officer, a tall human with cold eyes. The merchandise delivered to you was incorrectly processed. Merchandise? Da-hyun kept his body between them and Jisoo. You mean the person you delivered to my quarters? The officer's expression didn't change. The property belongs to Trader Tark and was mistakenly delivered to you. We're here to correct that error. She's not property, Da-hyun said firmly. She's a sentient being who was kidnapped from her homeworld. Tark's mandibles clicked rapidly. Human laws do not apply to species from beyond the empty zone. The Ilari female was legally obtained through trade with the Vraxian Imperium. The Vraxians invaded her world and took her by force. Da-hyun protested. The security officer placed his hand on his weapon. This is not a debate, Captain. Step aside. Da-hyun felt a light touch on his arm. Jisoo had moved beside him. They will hurt you, she whispered. Do not fight for me. Listen to the merchandise, Tark said. It knows its place. Something in Da-hyun snapped at those words. Years of witnessing injustices at the edges of human space, of looking the other way because it wasn't his business, suddenly came to a head. I paid for her, he said coldly. By your own rules, that makes her mine now. And I say she's a free person. The security officer drew his weapon. Final warning, Captain. We can do this the easy way or the hard way. I choose option 3, Da-hyun said. In one smooth motion, he slammed his fist against the emergency panel beside the door. Alarms blared throughout the section as fire suppressant foam began spraying from ceiling nozzles. In the confusion, Da-hyun grabbed Jisoo's hand and pulled her through the door, shoving past the surprise security team. They ran down the corridor as the emergency systems continued to create chaos. Where are we going? Jisoo asked as they ran. Back to my ship, Da-hyun replied. It's our only way out of here. Behind them, angry shouts and the sound of pursuing footsteps echoed through the station corridors. They will not let us leave, Jisoo said. Da-hyun tightened his grip on her hand. They won't have a choice. As they raced through the crowded main concourse, Da-hyun realized his life had just changed forever. He had stumbled upon something terrible, a trafficking network that treated sentient beings as food, and now he couldn't unknow it. Whatever happened next, there was no going back to his simple life as a cargo hauler. "We'll make it," he promised Jisoo, though he wasn't sure how. "I'll get you somewhere safe." For the first time, he saw something like hope in her silver eyes. Da-hyun pulled Jisoo through the crowded main corridor of Outpost 72. Emergency alarms still blared overhead, causing confusion among the station's visitors. People of various species moved aside as they ran past. "Security breach in Habitat Ring," announced the station's computer system. "All personnel report suspicious activity." "They're looking for us," Da-hyun said, breathing hard. He spotted 2 security officers ahead and quickly pulled Jisoo into a narrow maintenance passage. The passage was dimly lit with pipes running along the ceiling. The metal floor grating clanged under their feet as they ran. Jisoo kept pace with him, her blue skin appearing almost luminous in the low light. "Do you have plan?" she asked between breaths. "Get to my ship. Get out of here. Figure out the rest later," Da-hyun replied. It wasn't much of a plan, but it was all he had. They reached a junction where 3 passages met. Da-hyun hesitated, trying to remember the station's layout. "Which way to docking bays?" Jisoo asked. "Left, I think. Then down 2 levels." A sound from behind made them both freeze, the click of a weapon being readied. "Don't move," said a gruff voice. "Hands where I can see them." Da-hyun slowly raised his hands and turned to see one of the station's security officers pointing a neural stunner at them. The weapon wouldn't kill, but it would leave them paralyzed long enough to be captured. "Captain Reed, you're interfering with a legal business transaction," the officer said. "That's a serious offense." "Trafficking sentient beings is the offense," Da-hyun replied, trying to keep the officer talking while he looked for an escape route. The officer shrugged. "Not my job to decide. My job is to maintain order on this station." He reached for his communication device. "I have the fugitives in maintenance section 12B, he reported. Jisoo suddenly stepped forward. "Please," she said. "They will kill me." The officer's eyes narrowed. "Stay back, alien." "Let us go," she continued, taking another step. "You can say you lost us." "I said stay back." The officer raised his weapon higher. Da-hyun tensed, ready to leap at the officer if he fired. But before either of them could move, Jisoo reached up and touched her collar. Her silver eyes closed in concentration and pain flashed across her face. The metal collar around her neck began to glow faintly. Suddenly, the lights in the passage flickered. The officer's communication device emitted a high-pitched whine. His neural stunner sparked in his hand, causing him to drop it with a yelp of pain. "Now," Jisoo gasped, her voice strained. "Run." Da-hyun didn't hesitate. He grabbed her hand, and they sprinted down the left passage, leaving the confused officer behind. "What did you do?" he asked as they ran. "Pushed through collars blocking," Jisoo explained, wincing. "Touched station systems. Hurts very much." She stumbled, and Da-hyun caught her before she fell. "Can you keep going?" Jisoo nodded, though her face was tight with pain. The collar around her neck now had a hairline crack running through it. They continued through the maintenance passages, working their way toward the docking bays. Twice more they had to hide from security patrols. Each time, Jisoo would close her eyes, and the station systems would briefly malfunction, creating a distraction. After what seemed like hours but was probably only 20 minutes, they reached a service door that opened onto the docking bay level. "Bay 14 is at the far end," Da-hyun said, peering through the small window in the door. "The horizon is there, but I see at least 4 security officers guarding it." "They know we would go there," Jisoo said. Her breathing was shallow. and her blue skin had paled to a light cyan. "Are you all right?" Da-hyun asked, concerned. "Collar fighting me. Each time I use abilities, it hurts more." Da-hyun studied the collar again. The crack had widened slightly, but it still held firm. "We need a distraction bigger than a few flickering lights," he said. "Something to draw all the security away from my ship." Jisoo nodded. "I can try, but need to be closer to main systems." Da-hyun pointed to a control panel on the wall near the door. "Would that work?" "Yes, but after, I may not be conscious." "I'll carry you if I have to," Da-hyun promised. Jisoo placed her slender blue fingers on the control panel. Her silver eyes closed in concentration. The collar around her neck began to glow brighter, and she bit her lip to keep from crying out. For a moment, nothing happened. Then alarms began to sound throughout the docking bay. "Fire detected in Bay 3. All personnel evacuate immediately," announced the station's computer in a calm voice. "Oxygen levels will be reduced in 30 seconds." The security officers by the horizon looked at each other in confusion. Two of them immediately ran toward Bay 3. The other two hesitated, looking torn between their duty to guard the ship and the need to respond to the emergency. "Containment breach in Bay 7. The computer suddenly added. "Hazardous materials detected. All security personnel report for evacuation assistance." That did it. The remaining officers hurried away, leaving the horizon unguarded. Jisoo collapsed against Da-hyun, her eyes fluttering. The collar around her neck had cracked completely in half and fell to the floor with a metallic clang. "Did it?" she whispered weakly. Da-hyun lifted her into his arms. "Yes, you did. Now let's get out of here." He carried her across the docking bay to the horizon. The ship's external sensors recognized him, and the entry ramp lowered automatically. Once inside, he gently placed Jisoo in the co-pilot's seat and strapped her in. "Hold on," he said, sliding into the pilot's chair. "This won't be a standard departure." His fingers flew over the controls, initiating an emergency launch sequence. Warning messages flashed on the screen, informing him that proper undocking procedures had not been followed. "Override," he commanded the ship's computer. Authorization read Alpha 7. The magnetic clamps holding the horizon in place disengaged with a loud clunk. The ship's engines hummed to life. "Warning. Unauthorized departure detected," came the station controller's voice over the communication system. "Return to dock immediately or face consequences." Da-hyun ignored the warning and guided the horizon away from the docking bay. The station's massive doors were closing, attempting to trap them inside. "Too late," he muttered, pushing the engines to full power. The horizon shot through the narrowing gap with inches to spare, scraping its paint, but making it out into open space. "We made it," Da-hyun breathed, allowing himself a moment of relief. Then the radar screen beeped, showing 3 small craft launching from the station's military dock. "Vraxian pursuit vessels," Jisoo said weakly from beside him. "They hunt me long time." Da-hyun's hands tightened on the controls. The horizon was a cargo hauler, not a warship. It had decent shields but minimal weapons and was built for endurance rather than speed. "Can we outrun them?" Jisoo asked. Da-hyun checked the engines. "Not in normal space. But I've made some modifications to this old girl that aren't in the official specs." He flipped a series of switches hidden beneath a panel in the console. The ship's engine note changed, becoming deeper and more powerful. "Hang on," he warned Jisoo. "This might get rough." The first shots from the pursuit craft flashed past the horizon's hull as Da-hyun executed a series of evasive maneuvers that no cargo hauler should have been capable of. The ship groaned under the strain, but held together. "Need 30 seconds to charge the jump drive," Da-hyun explained, his eyes fixed on the controls. "Just 30 seconds." A blast from the lead pursuit craft struck the horizon's rear shields, causing the lights to flicker. "Shields at 60%, the ship's computer announced calmly. 20 seconds. Da-hyun counted. Another hit rocked the ship. Shields at 40%. Jae-soo placed her blue hand on the ship's console. Her silver eyes began to glow faintly. "I help," she said simply. The shield indicators suddenly strengthened, climbing back to 70%. 10 seconds, Da-hyun said, amazed by what he was seeing. The jump drive hummed loudly, reaching its peak charge. The pursuing Vraxian craft were closing fast, their weapons charging for another barrage. "Jump now," Da-hyun shouted, slamming his hand down on the activation control. Space folded around the horizon, stars stretching into lines of light. The ship shuddered, then shot forward into hyperspace, leaving their pursuers far behind. In the sudden quiet of hyperspace, Da-hyun turned to Jae-soo. "You saved us." But Jae-soo didn't respond. She had slumped in her seat, unconscious, a faint smile on her blue face. Da-hyun checked the ship's systems as the horizon cruised through hyperspace. The damage was worse than he had first thought. The shield generator had taken a direct hit. Life support was stable, but the power coupling to the main engines was failing. "We can't make it to the nearest human outpost," he said aloud, though Jae-soo was still unconscious in the co-pilot's seat. He gently placed a thermal blanket over her slender blue form. Her breathing was steady now, but she hadn't stirred since their escape 6 hours ago. Without her collar, her silver hair floated slightly, as if moved by an invisible current. The ship's computer chimed a warning. "Power coupling efficiency at 30%. Recommend immediate repairs." Da-hyun sighed and rubbed his tired eyes. "Computer, locate nearest safe harbor." "Analyzing," the computer replied. "Nearest safe harbor, mining outpost K-12. Distance, 2.4 light days. Current condition, may not be reachable with damaged power coupling." "Just perfect," Da-hyun muttered. A soft voice from beside him made him turn. "Your ship is hurt." Jae-soo was awake, her silver eyes now glowing with a gentle inner light that wasn't there before. "Jae-soo, how do you feel?" Da-hyun asked, relief evident in his voice. She touched her neck where the collar had been. "Free. First time in many months." She looked around the cockpit. "But your ship suffers." "The power coupling was damaged in the escape. We're losing engine efficiency." Jae-soo nodded and slowly unbuckled her safety harness. She stood on unsteady legs. "Show me." Da-hyun led her to the engine room at the rear of the ship. The power coupling glowed an angry red behind its protective casing. Sparks occasionally shot from its connections. "Can you fix it?" Jae-soo asked. "Not without parts we don't have," Da-hyun admitted. "I was hoping to reach the mining outpost, but at this rate, we'll drop out of hyperspace before we get there." Jae-soo stepped closer to the damaged coupling. "I can help." She reached out her slender blue hand. "Wait, it's too hot to touch." Da-hyun began, but stopped as he saw what was happening. Jae-soo's fingers didn't quite touch the coupling. Instead, they hovered just above it. A soft silver glow extended from her fingertips into the machinery. The angry red light of the coupling began to fade, turning to a healthy blue. "What are you doing?" Da-hyun asked in amazement. "Connecting," Jae-soo said simply. "Ilari can join with technology. Feel its pain. Help it heal." The damaged components began to realign, metal flowing like water under Jae-soo's guidance. Connections that had been severed reformed. The power readings on the nearby monitor climbed steadily. "Power coupling efficiency at 60%, the computer announced. 70%, 80%. After several minutes, Jae-soo stepped back. A thin sheen of sweat covered her blue skin, but she was smiling. "Power coupling efficiency at 92%, the computer reported. Stable." "That's incredible," Da-hyun said. "I've never seen anything like it." "Ilari gift," Jae-soo explained. "Why Vraxians want us. We repair their war machines, make them better." Da-hyun led her back to the ship's small galley. He prepared a meal for them both. Simple rehydrated stew, but better than the emergency rations they'd eaten earlier. As they ate, Jisoo told him more about her people. The Ilari were peaceful, focused on art and technology. Their natural ability to interface with machines had made their world advanced, but had also made them targets. Vraxians came 6 months ago, she said, her silver eyes dimming at the memory. Many ships. We had no weapons to fight them. I'm sorry, Dahyun said softly. Many Ilari taken, some for food markets, others to Vraxian shipyards. Her voice grew stronger. But not all captured. Some escaped. Hide in mountains. Fight back. Your people are still resisting? Dahyun asked. Jisoo nodded. Small groups. No weapons, but we have our gifts. She touched the ship's wall gently. Machines speak to us. We listen. We change. They finished their meal in comfortable silence. Then Jisoo looked at Dahyun with sudden intensity. Dahyun, I must tell you something important. What is it? Vraxians not just hunting Ilari. They prepare for war. Her silver eyes held his gaze firmly. War with humans. Dahyun felt a chill run down his spine. Are you sure? Yes, I heard guards speak while in captivity. Vraxians see humans as threat. You expand too quickly, explore too far. She leaned forward. They gather fleet now. Many ships, many weapons. When? Dahyun asked, his mind racing with the implications. Soon. Very soon. Jisoo's expression grew grim. They use captured Ilari to prepare special weapons. Weapons that human defenses cannot stop. Dahyun stood and paced the small galley. We need to warn my people. The human defense fleet needs to know about this. Yes, Jisoo agreed. I can help. I know Vraxian ship designs. Know their weaknesses. Dahyun looked at her with newfound respect. This fragile-looking alien woman, who had been treated as merchandise just days ago, was now offering to help save humanity. Why would you help us? He asked. Humans did nothing when your world was attacked. Jisoo stood and placed her blue hand on his arm. Humans did not know. And you, one human, saved me. Her silver eyes glowed warmly. If Vraxians defeated, maybe Ilari can be free again. Dahyun nodded. An alliance made sense. Together, then. Over the next 3 days, as they traveled to the mining outpost, Jisoo helped Dahyun repair more of the ship's damaged systems. Her ability to interface with technology amazed him. Components that would have taken days to fix were repaired in hours. In return, Dahyun taught Jisoo more about humans, their worlds, their customs, their strengths and weaknesses. She learned quickly, her command of universal standard improving by the hour. On the 4th day, as they approached the mining outpost, Jisoo suddenly stiffened while working on the navigation system. What's wrong? Dahyun asked. I feel something, she said, her silver eyes wide. Through the system. A signal. What kind of signal? Vraxian. Coded. But I understand it. Her expression grew alarmed. They have found us. Hunter ships nearby. Dahyun rushed to the cockpit and checked the scanners. They showed nothing unusual. The scanners don't detect anything, he said. They would not, Jisoo explained, following him. Vraxian hunter ships have cloaking technology. Your sensors cannot see them, but you can feel them. Jisoo nodded. Through communication signals. 3 ships. Coming this way. Dahyun's hands flew over the controls. How long do we have? Minutes only, Jisoo replied. She placed her hands on the ship's console. I will help. Silver energy flowed from her fingers into the ship's systems. The scanner display flickered and changed, now showing 3 faint outlines approaching their position. I adjusted sensors. Jisoo explained. Now they see what I see. Dahyun altered their course immediately, pushing the engines hard. We need to reach the mining outpost. It has defenses. Vraxians will follow, Jisoo warned. Good, Da-hyun said with grim determination. Let them come. The outpost is run by the human defense fleet. Once they see Vraxian ships in human space, they'll have to believe our warning. Jisoo nodded in understanding. Her hands remained on the console, maintaining the connection that allowed their sensors to track the pursuing vessels. If we survive, she said quietly, this could be the beginning. Beginning of what? Da-hyun asked, focused on piloting. Jisoo's silver eyes met his with a look of hope and determination. Beginning of alliance. Humans and Ilari. Fighting together. Da-hyun smiled at her. I think you're right. Let's make sure we live to see it happen. The horizon raced toward the mining outpost, carrying with it the seeds of a partnership that might just save both their species. Mining Outpost K-12 appeared on the view screen as a cluster of metal structures built into a large asteroid. Defensive turrets bristled from its surface, and small patrol ships circled its perimeter. Human Defense Fleet Outpost, Da-hyun explained to Jisoo. One of our forward bases. Jisoo nodded, her silver eyes fixed on the approaching station. Her blue hands remained on the console, maintaining the connection that allowed them to track the cloaked Vraxian ships. They still follow, she said. 3 ships, closing fast. Da-hyun opened a communication channel. Outpost K-12. This is Cargo Hauler Horizon requesting emergency docking. We are being pursued by hostile vessels. There was a pause before a response came through. Horizon. This is Outpost K-12. Our sensors show no pursuit craft. Please verify. They can't see them, Da-hyun muttered. He turned to Jisoo. Can you share what you're seeing with the outpost? Jisoo closed her silver eyes in concentration. The ship's communication system glowed under her touch, sending what I see now. On the outpost, alarms suddenly blared as their sensors detected the approaching Vraxian ships. Horizon, this is Admiral Han, came a new voice, deeper and more authoritative. What in blazes is going on? Our systems just detected 3 Vraxian warships where there was nothing a moment ago. Admiral, I have critical intelligence about a Vraxian invasion fleet, Da-hyun replied quickly. And I have a refugee with technology that can detect their cloaked ships. Request immediate docking and protection. Granted, Admiral Han responded without hesitation. They 5. We'll cover you. The outpost's defense turrets swiveled toward the now visible Vraxian ships. Bright energy beams lanced out, striking one of the pursuing vessels. The other 2 broke off their pursuit, realizing they had lost the advantage of surprise. Da-hyun guided the Horizon into the designated docking bay, just as the outpost's shields raised. Safety clamps secured the ship in place with a metallic thunk. We made it, he said with relief. Jisoo removed her hands from the console, looking exhausted but pleased. Yes. Now we must convince your leaders. They were met at the airlock by 6 armed guards who escorted them directly to the command center. Admiral Han was a tall, imposing man with steel-gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. He studied Jisoo with obvious curiosity. And Ilari, he said, I thought your kind were just spacers' tales. We are real, Jisoo replied simply. And in great danger. As are humans. Admiral Han turned to Da-hyun. Explain. For the next hour, Da-hyun and Jisoo took turns describing everything. From the accidental purchase at Outpost 72 to the Vraxian plans for invasion. Jisoo provided detailed information about Vraxian ship designs, weapons capabilities, and tactical preferences. If what you're saying is true, Admiral Han said when they finished, we're facing an imminent threat on a scale we haven't seen in generations. It is true, Jisoo insisted. She gestured to a nearby computer terminal. Let me show you. After a moment's hesitation, the Admiral nodded. Jisoo placed her blue hand on the terminal. Silver energy flowed from her fingertips into the system. The screen filled with technical specifications of Vraxian warships, invasion strategies, and troop movements. This is what I learned while captive, she explained. Vraxians speak freely around those they consider property. Admiral Han studied the information with growing concern. This confirms reports we've been getting from our outer scouts. He looked at Jisoo with new respect. You've provided more intelligence in 5 minutes than our spies have in months. Will you act on it? Dahyun asked. Immediately, Admiral Han assured him. But we'll need more than just information to stop an invasion force of this size. He turned to Jisoo. You said there are other Ilari still fighting on your homeworld. Yes, Jisoo confirmed. Small groups, hiding in mountains, using our abilities to sabotage Vraxian operations. We need to contact them, the Admiral decided. Forge an alliance. The Vraxians control all communication to and from Ilaria, Jisoo said, her expression troubled. Not all communication, Dahyun interjected. The Horizon has a quantum transmitter. Experimental tech. If Jisoo can modify it with her abilities, we might be able to bypass Vraxian monitoring. Admiral Han looked thoughtful. It's worth trying. In the meantime, I'll alert the defense fleet. Over the next week, Jisoo and Dahyun worked tirelessly. Jisoo enhanced the Horizon's transmitter, while Dahyun helped Admiral Han prepare defense strategies based on Jisoo's knowledge of Vraxian tactics. On the 8th day, Jisoo's modified transmitter made contact with the Ilari resistance. The face of an older Ilari male appeared on the screen, his silver eyes widening at the sight of Jisoo. Kyojin, Jisoo exclaimed. You live. Jisoo, the older Ilari replied, his voice filled with emotion. We thought you were lost. After a joyful reunion, Jisoo explained the situation. Kyojin, who led one of the largest resistance groups, agreed to coordinate with the human forces. The Vraxians grow careless, he reported. They believe we are broken. But we have been learning their systems, finding weaknesses. Admiral Han joined the conversation. If we coordinate our attacks, we might have a chance. The plan they developed was daring. The Ilari resistance would sabotage Vraxian shipyards and communication arrays from within, while the human defense fleet launched a surprise attack on their forward bases. 2 days later, as they were finalizing preparations, the outpost's alarms blared. A scout ship arrived with urgent news. The Vraxian invasion fleet had begun moving. They're coming sooner than we anticipated, Admiral Han announced grimly. We're out of time. Then we fight now, Jisoo said firmly. The battle that followed would later be recorded in history as the Battle of New Horizon. The human defense fleet, forewarned by Jisoo's intelligence, launched a preemptive strike against the Vraxian armada. At the same time, the Ilari resistance disabled key Vraxian systems, leaving many of their ships vulnerable. Dahyun, despite not being a military officer, was given command of a small squadron due to his knowledge of Vraxian tactics. Jisoo remained at his side, using her abilities to detect cloaked enemy ships and to repair damaged systems in the heat of battle. The fighting was fierce. The outpost itself came under direct attack, but the combined human and Ilari efforts gradually turned the tide. 1 year later, Dahyun, now Commander Reed, stood beside Jisoo on the observation deck of the Human Defense Fleet flagship. Below them, representatives from 17 different species gathered to sign the Sentient Rights Accord, a new interstellar treaty that explicitly prohibited the trafficking of sentient beings and recognized the sovereignty of all intelligent species. Your homeworld will be free soon, Dahyun said softly to Jisoo. The Liberation Fleet is almost ready. Jisoo nodded, her silver eyes bright with hope. Because of you. Dahyun shook his head. Because we worked together. Human determination and Ilari insight. Admiral Han approached them, now wearing the insignia of Fleet Commander. Quite a change from when you first arrived at my outpost, he remarked. A cargo hauler and a trafficked alien, now heroes of the Alliance. Jisoo smiled, her blue skin luminous in the starlight. Change comes from unexpected places, and sometimes from a simple mistake. Dahyun added, thinking back to that day at Outpost 72 when he had unwittingly ordered fresh meat. As the ceremony below began, Jisoo slipped her hand into Dahyun's. "No mistake," she said quietly. "Destiny." Dahyun squeezed her hand gently. Whatever it was, mistake, destiny, or simply being in the right place at the right time, it had changed the course of two civilizations and saved countless lives. On the table in the center of the gathering, the Sentient Rights Accord was signed by the first representatives. The document's opening words, visible on the large display screens throughout the hall, read, "All sentient beings, regardless of origin, form, or ability, are born free and equal in dignity and rights." It was a new beginning for the galaxy, and it had all started with an order for dinner.